She clicked deploy at 4:57 p.m. and saved the company. At 4:58, she got the email that erased her existence. No warning. No meeting. Just a cold, 4-paragraph message from someone named T. McGrath, Corporate Affairs, informing her that her position had been eliminated. Effective immediately. Access revoked at 5:15. Do not return to the premises without escort. That was it. No. Thank you. No handshake. Not even a full sentence with her name. Eliza Warren, who had spent 19 years keeping the company's core trading infrastructure from collapsing under its own weight, was now dismissed with the same effort it takes to delete a calendar invite. Her hand hovered over the mouse. For a second, she thought it was a joke. Maybe a glitch. Maybe someone sent it to the wrong person. But then the cursor froze. Slack auto-logged her out. Her terminal connection dropped. Her access was already gone. And somewhere upstairs, the new CTO Chase Radley, fresh from a VC-funded crypto startup, was probably celebrating the sunsetting of outdated systems like he'd just cured latency itself. They didn't even have the guts to look her in the eye. She sat there, stunned, the hum of the server racks above her head now sounding more like a eulogy than white noise. This was the reward for 2 decades of keeping the lights on, a PDF attachment with exit instructions, and a smiley face HR logo. No one told her this is how it would end. Not after all the nights sleeping in the server room during audit week. Not after rebooting systems by flashlight during the 2012 blackout. Not after saving the platform during a 0-day exploit no one else even detected. And yet here she was deleted by committee. You ever poured your soul into something only to be discarded like junk mail? Because if that's ever happened to you, drop a comment. You don't have to tell the whole story. Just say, same. We see you. She didn't cry, didn't curse. She just reached into her drawer, pulled out her worn leather notebook, and flipped to a blank page. Then she wrote 2 words in red ink. They'll regret this. They called it the dungeon, but to Eliza Warren, it was home. 2 floors beneath Corvest's shimmering glass atrium, behind a keypad-locked steel door that creaked like it remembered better days, sat a room that most employees didn't even know existed. The server room. Cold as a meat locker, loud as a subway tunnel, and lit with flickering fluorescence that hummed like tired ghosts. That's where Eliza spent the last 19 years. She wasn't always invisible. There was a time, years ago, when her name sat on every whiteboard during product launches. Back when people still asked her opinion instead of assuming she was just the mainframe person. But over time, the faces changed, titles got rebranded, and her desk got pushed further and further into the shadows, until one day, she realized she didn't even have a team anymore. Just cables. And code. And silence. Eliza was the last person in the company who could navigate the legacy infrastructure blindfolded. She didn't just maintain it, she knew it, down to the quirks of each machine. The way Rack 12's fan hiccuped every time the air conditioner kicked in. How the audit backup scripts only ran properly if triggered manually from a terminal older than half the engineering team. No one else wanted to touch it. No one even asked to. Because everyone assumed Eliza would always be there. The new DevOps hires came and went, armed with buzzwords and Docker dreams. They'd glance at the blinking towers of beige metal and chuckle. We should sunset this stuff, they'd say, sipping oat milk lattes and browsing Terraform modules they didn't understand. But when systems failed, when backups froze or firewalls misfired, who did they call? Eliza. They never thanked her. Not really. At most, she'd get a Slack emoji reaction or a nod in the hallway. Yet, she stayed. Not out of loyalty, not anymore. She stayed because there were things in those machines that mattered, even if no one else saw it, because someone had to care. And because deep down, a part of her believed that someday someone might remember who kept the ship afloat all those years. She kept her own notes. Paper ones. A leather-bound notebook full of diagrams and passwords and command line scripts written in a careful, angular hand. No OneDrive, no cloud backups. She didn't trust the cloud with critical systems, and she sure as hell didn't trust the people managing it. Sometimes, when the fluorescent lights flickered just right, and the hum of the cooling units lined up with the rhythm of her typing, Eliza would smile to herself and whisper, "Still got it." Oh, because she did. Even if no one noticed. Even if the execs upstairs were too busy debating AI plugins to realize that the only reason their shiny front end worked at all was because of a woman buried in a room they never visited, whispering commands into a keyboard older than their intern. They called her a ghost. They were half right. But ghosts don't keep systems alive. Ghosts don't write patches at 3 a.m. or reboot trading pipelines on zero sleep and stale coffee. Ghosts don't hold a company together with nothing but grit, gum, and a BIOS password no one else knows. Eliza Warren wasn't a ghost. She was the foundation. The firewall. The final line between order and digital collapse. And they never saw her coming. It started with a meeting she wasn't invited to. Eliza noticed the shift long before anyone said a word. It wasn't just the Slack glitches, the subtle removals from group threads she built herself, or the disappearing calendar invites. It was the air, how it changed. The way voices lowered when she entered a room, how glances darted away a second too fast. How Chase Radley had stopped asking questions and started asking around. Chase, the new CTO. He wore his ambition like colonial, loud, synthetic, and impossible to ignore. Hired 6 months ago from a trendy fintech startup in Seattle, Chase brought big promises and a bigger ego. He spoke in acronyms and metaphors. We need to get leaner. Legacy is latency. Let's future-proof the stack. Everyone nodded. No one challenged him. Except Eliza. She didn't mean to. It wasn't personal, it was just facts. When he suggested migrating the audit queue to a cloud-native pipeline using third-party orchestration, she simply said, "That's not compliant with federal regulations. We'd get flagged in a week." He smiled, that tight-lipped, PR-trained smile. Noted. Our blonde. But something changed after that. Within days, her access to certain logs was under review. Her credentials for a few lower-tier servers were temporarily revoked for security alignment. She wasn't paranoid, not yet. She'd worked in tech long enough to know. When leadership wants you gone, they don't show you the door. They just start deleting the floor beneath you. Chase's office was glass, of course. Top floor, open layout, minimalist desk with exactly one monitor, one succulent, and a mug that read, "Move fast, break things." From that perch, he watched the company like a hawk with a pitch deck. And one afternoon, Eliza passed by on her way to refill her coffee black. No sugar, no cream, and saw them. HR, legal, finance. All gathered around his desk, nodding, pointing, smiling the kind of smiles that didn't reach the eyes. She slowed for just a second, caught a glimpse of her own name on a spreadsheet open behind Chase's arm. It wasn't bolded, it was highlighted. She didn't stop, didn't ask, just kept walking because she already knew. The coup wasn't loud, it was careful. They wouldn't fire her because of performance. They'd never win that battle, or uptime record alone was legendary. Instead, they'd call it strategic restructuring, a new direction, a shift toward modernization, a line item with a 3-paragraph explanation buried in the quarterly report. And it wouldn't just be her job they'd erase. It would be her legacy. The architecture, the scripting, the years of undocumented fixes and undocumented pain. The slow push had begun. And Chase? He was the smiling face of it. Later that week, a junior engineer named Zoe stopped by her desk, eyes wide. "Hey, just wondering, do we still have a config file for the tape sync and the offsite backups? No one seems to know where it lives." Eliza didn't answer at first. Then she looked up, calmly, and said, "Tell Chase to check the cloud." Zoe blinked. "But it's not in." Eliza smiled. "I know," and turned back to her screen. Outside, sunlight poured into Chase's glass office. Everything looked transparent. But behind the glass? They were already sharpening the knives. No farewell. No card. No handshake at the elevator. Just silence. The next morning, Eliza Warren walked into Corvest like she always had, black hoodie zipped to the collarbone, coffee thermos in hand, hair pulled into the same practical bun she'd worn since before Slack was a thing. Her ID badge still beeped at the security gate. The fluorescent lights in the stairwell still buzzed their tired tune. The air still smelled like burnt toner and too much ambition. But everything else had changed. She didn't go to her desk right away. Instead, she took one slow lap around the floor. Her floor, once filled with engineers she had onboarded, trained, rescued during product failures and holiday outages. Now, it was nothing but earbuds and clicky keyboards and people who didn't know what a cron job was unless it had a Jira ticket. No one looked up. Eliza sat down, powered up the terminal one last time, and ran a final check. Everything was stable for now. She had deployed the patch late last night from home, just in case the morning came with more surprises. It was one of her invisible miracles. A temporary fix for a memory leak in the trading logic that, left unchecked, could have crippled real-time settlements before Tuesday. No one had asked her to fix it. No one knew it even existed. But she knew. She always did. Her fingers moved automatically across the keyboard, pulling up the full system topology. Then she hit print. The old HP LaserJet in the corner screeched to life like it was coughing up a ghost. 32 pages. Firewall rules. IP trees. Batch scripts. Access logs. Legacy overrides. Documentation no one else had ever bothered to request. She stacked the papers neatly, slid them into a manila envelope, and tucked it into her bag right between a half-eaten granola bar and a bottle of aspirin that rattled like a maraca every time she moved. Then she opened the drawer she hadn't opened in years. Inside, her cactus, bent sideways, missing a few spikes, clinging to life in a chipped ceramic mug that read, "Keep calm and Colonel Panic." She smiled, gently, and placed it next to the envelope. Finally, she reached for her keychain and removed the laminated root credential card worn at the edges, corner curling up, the ink almost rubbed clean from 17 years of service. She set it on the keyboard, lined it up square, like someone placing flowers on a grave. It was 7:09 a.m. No one noticed she was leaving. No good luck. No. Stay in touch. Just one more empty desk in a sea of them. As she walked out, the badge reader blinked once, confused, as if it too wasn't ready to let her go. She passed the HR desk already empty. Of course. In the break room fridge, someone had written Brent on the last slice of carrot cake. She thought about taking it. Didn't. The air outside felt different. Softer, lighter. Eliza didn't turn back. She just kept walking. A quiet exit from a place that had once needed her more than it ever understood. Montana was quieter than she remembered. It had been nearly a decade since Eliza last came to the cabin. A modest, one-story structure, tucked against a tree line, overlooking a lake that barely moved even in the wind. No Wi-Fi. Barely a cell signal. No one from Corvest had ever known it existed, and that was exactly why she chose it. She arrived just before dusk, her old Subaru coughing its way up the gravel path like it too needed a break. She didn't unpack right away. Just stood on the porch, one hand on the railing, the other still wrapped around the handle of the bag that now held her notebook, a manila envelope, and a half-dead cactus. For the first time in years, no alerts buzzed in her pocket. No pings. No urgent Slack tags from engineers half her age asking how to grep log files they never read. No last-minute calls from Chase asking if the middleware thing was still doing the thing. Silence. Not the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. Eliza stepped inside, dropped the bag by the door, and lit the wood stove. The air smelled like dust, pine, and something close to freedom. She poured a coffee, cheap, bitter, perfect, and sat by the window as the sun lowered itself behind the mountains like a curtain closing on Act 1. She had no plan. That surprised her. She wasn't the kind of woman who just left. Her entire life had been built on redundancy, contingency, uptime. But something inside her had snapped, not loud, not dramatic, just clean, like a cable finally cut after being frayed for too long. At some point, she took out the notebook. Flipping past the pages felt like walking through her own history. There were entries from 2011 firewall protocols scribbled in red pen, diagrams of subnet structures only she understood, annotations in margins like whispered reminders to herself. And somewhere around page 67, a line written in all caps. "If I'm ever gone, no one else will fix this." She stared at that for a long time. It wasn't spite. Not really. It was just the truth. Back at CoreVest, they were preparing to launch the new investor portal. Chase had posted a smiling photo of the engineering team on LinkedIn laptops, open, arms crossed, all confidence and caffeine. "The future is cloud native," the caption read. "Legacy-free, launching Monday." Eliza chuckled into her mug. They had no idea what their future was sitting on. She hadn't sabotaged anything. That wasn't her style. Every system she maintained was still intact, for now. But the fragile lattice of code, scripts, and manual overrides they depended on? That was hers. And now, for the first time in nearly 20 years, it was unattended. Not broken. Just unspoken. No breadcrumbs. No passwords in vaults. No last-minute tutorials. Just a perfect, deliberate absence. She hadn't deleted anything. She'd simply walked away and taken the oxygen with her. That was her silence protocol. Not a shutdown. A withdrawal. Because sometimes, the loudest thing you can do is disappear. It started at 3:11 a.m. A junior engineer named Kyle, who'd been at CoreVest for just under 6 weeks, rubbed sleep from his eyes as a Slack alert buzzed him awake. The message was simple. Just one line from the system monitor bot. "Courses sen, no response, retrying." He blinked, frowned, then opened his laptop. By 3:13, 3 more nodes had gone dark. At first, he assumed it was a networking hiccup. It usually was. He reran the Ansible playbooks. Chase had them standardize last month's scripts that looked good on paper, but never worked quite right without manual tweaks. When those failed, he checked the root password. Access denied. Tried again. Access denied. And then, on the 3rd attempt, account locked. That's when his stomach sank. He messaged Ravi, a contractor who'd been pulled in during the infrastructure modernization push. Ravi logged in from his hotel room across town, still in a hoodie and one sock, muttering, "Probably just a permission sync issue." It wasn't. By 3:27, the core trading queue stopped processing. By 3:34, the authentication tokens began timing out. By 3:41, the front-end investor portal CoreVest's shiny new flagship was showing login errors to early European users. At 4:05 a.m., someone finally woke up Chase. He arrived 40 minutes later, breathless, holding an energy drink and an excuse. "Just use the recovery keys," he said, tossing his backpack under the desk. "They're in the SharePoint." "They don't work," Ravi said quietly. Chase frowned. "Then use the ones I put in Slack last week." Kyle looked up from his terminal. "You mean the thread where Eliza replied with a skull emoji?" Silence. They tried restoring backups from the cloud mirror, but each attempt crashed mid-process. The backups were there, they just wouldn't decrypt. Chase paced. Okay, so what's missing?" Ravi didn't look up. "The encryption keys." "But we have those." "No," Ravi interrupted, voice low. "We have some keys, but not the right ones. Not the ones Eliza used when she wrote the hybrid tape logic for off-site sync. And not the ones that unlock the cron daemon that runs the quarterly audit tasks." A chill ran through the room. By 5:12 a.m., Brent the COO's pulled out of a strategy retreat in Aspen and placed in front of a laptop he barely understood. "Just reboot the damn systems," he barked through a headset. Chase tried. And failed. Because it wasn't just a failure of systems. It was a failure of assumption. Of arrogance. of believing someone like Eliza could be erased with a form letter and a badge deactivation. By 6:03, the trade queues had stacked past the auto-clear threshold. By 6:27, the system began refusing new API calls. By 6:44, they realized the system wasn't down temporarily. It was locked. And somewhere, in a quiet cabin far from the blinking chaos, a woman stirred her coffee and listened to the birds. She didn't need to check her phone. She already knew. The silence had started speaking. At 7:12 a.m., Corvest's portal went from slow to dead. The login page froze. Trade authorizations hung without response. The dashboard designed by a boutique UI firm for maximum stickiness became a static screen with a spinning wheel and a single error. Token invalid. Contact administrator. Problem was, the administrator had just learned how to tie trout flies. By 7:26, someone from compliance finally asked the right question. Who holds the root credentials for the off-site archive vault? Chase blinked. No one spoke. Someone else mumbled. Didn't Eliza build the first iteration of that? Brent muttered something under his breath, something about backups and redundancy, but nobody was listening. A younger engineer named Maya finally spoke up. Quiet but steady. Eliza didn't just build it, she designed the entire encryption schema. Custom logic. It's not in Git, not in Confluence. I asked her once to migrate it to our new vault, and she said, Maya post. She said, only if you pay me in bourbon and apologies. A silence settled across the room. One of those silences that doesn't invite answers, just realizations. Someone checked the Slack thread from 3 months ago, the one where Eliza was asked about recovery procedures. All she had replied with was a skull emoji and a line. If you sunset the system, don't be surprised when the sun goes down. Oh, that wasn't sarcasm. It was a warning. And now, the lights were off. By 7:43, they found a printout in the old equipment locker labeled ML Offsite Tape. Dated 2016. Scribbled at the bottom in pen was a note. Key rotation, Eliza only. They scrambled. Emails. Calls. Voicemails. All to one name. Eliza Warren. No one else could fix it. Because no one else had the key. And if you've ever been treated like you're disposable only to watch everything collapse without you drop a comment, just say, still here. Because some of us were never the backup plan, we were the whole system. At 8:05 a.m., a voicemail finally came through. Janet, one of the few people left from the old days, spoke softly but urgently. Hey, they're looking for you. I think they just realized the only person who can fix this is you. I told them it was a mistake, but, yeah. Just thought you should know. Hope you're okay. Eliza was standing barefoot on the porch, coffee in hand, staring out at the lake. Morning mist curled across the surface like smoke from something ancient. Her phone buzzed again, unknown number, then another, then 5 more. She didn't answer. Didn't need to. Because when you are the key, you don't go back for free. You wait for them to knock. The first voicemail came in at 8:41 a.m. It was Brent's voice, low, strained, wrapped in a layer of panic he couldn't quite hide. Hey, Eliza, I know this is unexpected. But, listen, we're having a situation over here. Something with the legacy system. We could really use your help. We'd be happy to compensate you generously. Just, please call me back. He didn't even try to fake control. That alone told her everything. Eliza stood in the doorway of the cabin, her phone still in her hand, thumb hovering over the screen. The lake behind her was calm, quiet, unmoved. A soft breeze lifted her hair. She didn't move. Another voicemail followed. Then a text. Critical outage. All systems down. Please, Eliza. No salutation. No signature. Just desperation. It wasn't just Brent. The COO. Now the CTO, Chase, had entered the chat. His name popped up next with a flood of missed calls and a message that read like a man falling down a stairwell. Eliza, realize now we underestimated the importance of your infrastructure. We're ready to discuss a consulting arrangement. Whatever terms you require. Faux. She read that one twice. Then again. And laughed. It wasn't a bitter laugh. Not sharp or cruel. It was quiet, soft, full of the kind of clarity that only comes after you've been told repeatedly that you're obsolete, unnecessary, outdated. And then those same people come knocking when their shiny systems crumble. She poured another cup of coffee. No rush. No guilt. Let them sweat. By 9:22, someone from PR emailed. A woman named Danielle. Corporate tone, overpolished. Hi, Elisa. Just checking in to see how you're doing post-transition. We'd love your feedback on the offboarding process. Eliza stared at that smiley face like it was a sticker on a funeral notice. Her finger hovered over the delete button. Instead, she screenshotted it, just in case she ever needed a reason to say no again. Outside, a blue jay landed on the railing. Pecked at something. Flew off. She checked the inbox again. 10 more emails. A few LinkedIn messages. One from someone at legal asking for a brief chat regarding system architecture you were involved in. And then came Janet. A name that didn't make her jaw tighten. The message was simple. They're offering a contract. 3 times your old salary. Chase is on the verge of tears. They want you to come back. Only you. Eliza didn't answer. Not yet. She let it sit. Because when people spend years ignoring your voice and then one day beg you to speak, you don't rush to respond. You wait until the silence hurts them the way it once hurt you. Eliza didn't answer any of their messages. Not the emails. Not the texts. Not even the one from Brent labeled Urgent CEO Direct Request. She gave it a full day. Let it all sit. Let their panic soak deeper. Let them feel the weight of every missing login, every failed API handshake, every investor screaming into a support line that no longer connected. Then, on Tuesday morning at exactly 7 a.m., she powered up her personal laptop. She didn't respond with a call. No video chat, no apology for the delay. Just an email. Plain text. Subject line. Proposal. CoreVest Emergency System Restoration. Inside the body of the message was one sentence. See, attached. The PDF was 1 page. Clean. Sharp. System Access Consultation Agreement. Flat rate, $1 million. No payment plan. No net 30. Funds to be wired in full, upfront. Scope. 1 on-site session. System access granted for the sole purpose of restoring operational functionality to CoreVest's legacy infrastructure. No further documentation. No follow-up support. No consulting beyond the agreed task. Additional hours. $10,000, hour, billed in advance. Non-refundable. At the bottom, one final line, printed in smaller font, but bold. No payment equals no fix. She hit send. Flagged the email as low priority. Then powered off the laptop and made herself eggs. By 8:15, the first response came in. From Chase. Eliza, this is a bit steep, don't you think? Surely we can work out a more. She didn't reply. At 9:03, Brent forwarded a new message. Simple. Desperate. Defeated. Approved. Wire in progress. She smiled. Not from spite, from precision. Like watching a system do exactly what it was built to do, after years of being underestimated. She changed into jeans, grabbed her worn canvas bag, and tucked her old leather notebook inside along with her cactus, now still and dusty, but alive. Then she slid on her boots, zipped up her hoodie, and walked out into the Montana morning like it was any other Tuesday. Except this time, she wasn't going to save a company. She was going to invoice it. They didn't give her a badge. They didn't need to. The security guard at the front desk looked up, recognized her immediately, and gave a silent nod. No questions, no clipboard, just a quiet respect, the kind that couldn't be printed on an ID. Eliza stepped into the building like a ghost returning to a house that tried to forget her. Corvus headquarters looked the same. Sleek marble floors, glass walls. Plants that were probably plastic. But the energy? Different, thinner. Like panic had been scrubbed off the walls but still clung to the corners. No one greeted her. They just watched. Eyes tracking her as she walked through the open floor office of laptops, frozen mid-air, monitors displaying red alerts, and engineers whispering over whiteboards filled with question marks. She didn't say a word. At the end of the hallway, past a row of breathless executives and tight-jawed interns, stood the door to the server room. The same room she had practically lived in for 19 years. The blinking lights welcomed her back like old friends. She opened her bag, pulled out her notebookages, soft with age, corners bent, pages thick with ink and sweat and memory. She flipped to a dog-eared page marked with a single paperclip, and got to work. No speeches, no team, no stand-ups. Just Eliza. Her fingers danced across the keyboard like they'd never left. She bypassed the locked sessions, restored the broken daemons, reconnected the orphaned cron jobs, reinitialized the hybrid backup loop. It was muscle memory lines of code flowing from her brain like breath. One of the junior engineers, Maya, watched from a distance, her mouth slightly open. "She's not using notes," someone whispered. "She is the notes," Maya replied. The room stayed silent, except for the hum of the servers, the soft clack of keys, and the quiet return of systems gasping back to life. A green light flickered on. Then another. And another. By the 45th minute, the trading engine reloaded. By the 52nd, the portal unlocked. And by the 55th, Corvest was back online. Eliza leaned back in the chair. Let the hum of recovery settle around her like a warm wind. Then she stood, closed the notebook, slid it back into her bag. The execs moved as if to say something, but she didn't stop. She didn't need to. As she walked past the stunned team, Chase opened his mouth. Eliza glanced at him once. Not with anger, not even smugness. Just finality. At the exit, the same security guard held the door open. She gave him a small nod, then walked out. No hugs. No applause. No redemption arc. Just 55 minutes of quiet brilliance, and a company left standing on the shoulders of the one woman they tried to erase. She didn't stick around to see the aftermath. No interviews. No LinkedIn posts. No press releases with her name tagged in bold. Just the transfer confirmation in her inbox. $1 million. Cleared. Immediate. And then, Eliza disappeared again. Not into the shadows but into the light she'd been chasing for years. Back to the cabin. Back to the lake. Back to the silence that didn't ask her to explain her worth. For a while, the world forgot her. Or, at least, it tried to. Corvest, however, didn't forget. Couldn't. Because no matter how fast they tried to rehire, rebuild, and rebrand, the truth lingered like smoke. They'd nearly lost everything. Because of one decision, one email, one underestimated woman. And while they scrambled to restore trust with clients, investors, and regulators, Eliza was somewhere in the Montana woods, fishing with a coffee thermos tied to her belt, humming Fleetwood Mac under her breath. Until Las Vegas. DEF CON. A year later, a late-night panel titled Legacy Encryption Architectures in Modern Failures drew a packed crowd mostly out of curiosity. The speaker, listed only as M. Ellis, wore a hoodie pulled low over her face and presented slides with no company logos, no self-promotion. But what she revealed stunned even the most seasoned hackers in the room. A custom-built hybrid encryption schema. Part binary rot, part tape index logic. No known vulnerabilities. No backdoor dependencies. No corporate fingerprint. Designed to survive data obsolescence, built by hand. This system kept $47 billion in financial transactions stable over 19 years, the voice said calmly. It was undocumented, underrated, and entirely operational until the day it was deleted by someone with no idea what they were looking at. The room fell into reverent silence. And then someone whispered from the back. That was Corvest. The figure at the podium gave no confirmation, no denial. Just clicked to the final slide. A single sentence. You don't need to be visible to be essential. She packed up her laptop and vanished before anyone could get a clear photo. After that, rumors spread like wildfire. People said she had published her schema as open source under an alias. Others claimed she had quietly sold her framework to a defense contractor. Some believed she'd been hired by a global cybersecurity firm under a sealed identity. But none of them could say for sure. Because Eliza Warren no longer lived on anyone's payroll. She wasn't a consultant. She wasn't on call. She wasn't even listed in company memory. She was something rarer. She was legend. The kind told in whispers over server logs and late-night coffee. The kind interns hear about during onboarding and never quite believe until they stare down a failed decryption key and realize someone, somewhere, built this. She wasn't just a ghost in the machine. She was the architect. And while the companies scrambled to prevent the next outage, she sat on the porch of her cabin, notebook in hand, sketching something new. Something no one would understand. Not until it broke. Or until they tried to replace her. Again. By the time Corvest stock stabilized, Eliza Warren was already gone. Not hiding, just living. She'd bought the land outright. 30 acres. No neighbors. No Wi-Fi. A creek that ran clear year-round and a back porch with just enough creek to remind her it was real. She didn't build a smart home. Didn't install solar or sensors. Just a well, a wood stove, and a piece she didn't have to debug. Every so often, a piece of mail still made its way to her, an old colleague forwarding a magazine with a headline like, How One Woman Silently Saved FinTech. Or a glossy article quoting Chase Radley, carefully spinning phrases like collaborative recovery and legacy resilience. She didn't get angry. She didn't roll her eyes. She just smiled. Because now, she understood something they never would. Value isn't what people say about you. It's what collapses when you're not there. It wasn't just about servers or code or credentials. It was the late nights. The undocumented patches. The judgment calls only she could make because she'd earned her intuition the hard way. It was never about loyalty to a company. It was about loyalty to integrity. To doing things right even when no one was watching. Especially when no one was watching. Now, when she opened her notebook, it wasn't to sketch recovery protocols or subnet trees. It was to outline fly fishing patterns. To plan next season's garden. To jot down the names of birds she could finally identify without Googling. And still, sometimes, just sometimes, she'd get a call from an unknown number. Or a polite email with too many exclamation points. Hi Eliza, hope you're well. Just wondering if you'd be open to a brief consulting conversation regarding system stability in legacy environments? She never answered. Not because she was bitter, but because she no longer needed to prove anything. Her value had already been written into code, into failure, into recovery, into history. She didn't need applause. She didn't want revenge. She just wanted silence. And she earned every decibel of it. She sat outside that morning, coffee in one hand, sun on her face, and watched a hawk circle wide over the field. For a moment, she thought back to the server room, the hum, the flickering light. The solitude disguised as burden. And she realized it had all led here. Not to power. Not to money. But to clarity. And if you've ever had to walk away to finally be seen, if you've ever had to let it all break before they realized what you were worth, leave a comment. Just write, I know now. Because some lessons are only visible in the silence.